Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our last empowering webinar of the year. We've had great success and welcomed many of you throughout 2015 and look forward to a strong program next year as well. So today we're going to unravel, if you will, the Power Site Inspection, 8 ways to demystify even the most complex destinations. I'm Terry Roberts with DMAI, and I'm your moderator for today. DMAI, Destination Marketing Association International, is the trade association for DMOs, also known as Convention and Visitors Bureaus. To welcome a few folks today. First of all, I just would like to welcome EPRO Direct. EPRO is our sponsor, and Chris Wessel will be joining us at the end of the broadcast to speak with you about EPRO. And my panelist for today, Lisa Lopez. Lisa is the Director of Sales for the Midwest for NYC & Company. And Lisa has been with NYC & Company for 7 years, and in San Francisco as the Regional Director of National Accounts. She opened NYC & Company's first West Coast office. And then she transferred to Minneapolis in 2011 as the Director of Sales, again in their remote office there. Lisa has been in the industry, even though she doesn't look it, for over 20 years. And prior to NYC & Company, Lisa and I both were fellow Marriott sales associates. Lisa working for Marriott for 10 years. And Lisa's a great traveler with her family, her husband Steve, and her daughters. And Lisa, you mentioned that you stay antsy if your suitcase stays unpacked too long. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us and for providing your insight today from your perspective, many years in the industry.
Thank you, Terry, very much. Thanks, Shima. I appreciate the invitation to join today as a panelist, and of course a big thanks out to our sponsor, Chris at EPRO Direct. I look forward to a great discussion.
Great. So I'll give everyone, the planners who are with us today, our webinar roadmap, if you will. So when Lisa and I first started talking about this subject, we mentioned that you may have heard of taking a power nap or going to a power lunch, or now even a lot of talk about the power workout. So power denotes the ability to get the most accomplished in the least amount of time, right, with maximum effectiveness. And it also, I think, indicates using the right people, the right tools, and the right resources. So Lisa and I sat down, and we came up with 8 tips specifically designed to hopefully help all of you get the most from your site inspections. We want to make sure that you can streamline your agenda and put a plan in place to make sure that you involve the right partners from the beginning. Many of you that we hear from express some frustration about working in this high-demand seller's marketplace, and hoteliers are having difficulty handling the heavy influx of leads. Planners are getting frustrated with lengthy response times, lack of availability, and all that happens before the site inspection even begins. So Lisa and I reviewed the communication process and the key components to be considered before, during, and after the site inspection to make sure that you are able to see the right properties, secure the best offer, and really find the right meeting location that will attract your attendees. So we kind of discovered that even though we're talking about site inspections, a lot of our tips are for things that you really need to do prior to packing that suitcase, right, Lisa, and getting to the destination itself. So we will refer to your RFP and things that happen up front before the site inspection even begins.
Absolutely.
So Lisa, so Lisa, our number one tip, if you will, for planners in, pulling apart any destination, and we kind of talked about complex destinations, Lisa, because I know like NYC, as many gateway cities, sometimes can put off a planner of a smaller meeting. And so we came up with these 10 tips, and I think that they really help planners navigate complex destinations, but at the same time can be applied to any site inspection in any destination. So tip number one was really about the balancing act. And when we talked about that, Lisa, we said how important it is to consider both the organizational goals and meeting needs, along with the booking parameters of the hotels, the venues, and the destinations that you're considering. Like, it's a little like matchmaking, but then I think planners kind of draw a blank going, well, how am I really supposed to understand the booking parameters of a destination?
Yeah, I think really you hit on something really good, that really there's so much pre-planning that goes into making a successful site inspection, and that really, I think, starts with a good RFP. So I think if you have a good RFP, you're going to have a good site inspection. And really what that means is it's all about communication. I think that having real specific information in your RFP as to the needs of the group, the profile of the attendees, budget parameters, all of those really necessary pieces of information really will help us target the site inspection process and lead you through the RFP process, so that when we get to the site inspection, that we have a very, very targeted effort. I think that it really starts in that RFP stage.
And Lisa, when I am putting together a complete RFP and giving this very detailed information, then it helps someone like yourself aid a planner in giving information about which hotels are likely to be able to meet those parameters, which won't, how dates may need to shift, etc., correct?
Exactly, because I think what happens these days is planners often look, at their options, whether they're looking in Cvent or anything else, and they look at a city like New York City or any of the other major cities, and it's intimidating with all of the choices. And I think really, if you get your DMO partner involved in your RFP at the very beginning, we can really help guide you, because really a city has very many smaller cities and experiences within the one big destination. And as you mentioned, we're good at matchmaking in the respect that we're going to help you find the right fit within our city, the right experiences within our city, so that you do have a successful site inspection.
So you set us up nicely, Lisa, for point number two, which is, really break it down. And I think particularly in a destination that might have a reputation for being, quote unquote, too expensive or too complex, maybe for a smaller group, it may be necessary to kind of break it down and not look at NYC, for example, as a city, but look at it as a compilation of districts or boroughs in your case, or in some destinations maybe even look at the various regions.
Absolutely. I think that's where we can really provide you a lot of value and limit the time that you're Googling and spending time researching. I'll give you an example. I was just meeting with a Medtronic client the other day in their office, and they were talking to me about having difficulty placing a meeting for 500 people the second week of December. And if anybody knows the second week of December in New York City, it's our highest, most busy time. And so, they had been really frustrated trying to find options and this and that, and they hadn't engaged me at the very beginning. And within just the time that we talked, I came back to the office. I was able to come up with lots of different ideas and strategies for them to look maybe outside of the areas of New York where they were looking. So we started looking in the boroughs. We started pairing together hotels with venues that could accommodate them, and we came up with about 15 different ideas that they never thought of, and now we're working those into a site inspection that will be really productive for them. So I think that's where, we can sort of eliminate the frustration and really help kind of break that down, that city down, so it's not one huge piece. It's manageable and in little bites and bits of information.
Yeah, Lisa, I liked what you had said to me on the phone. You said you can find the best fit within the city of the city, right? Like, that again, it's not NYC. It's a multiple, and one's right for you. So I love that.
Exactly.
Lisa, the thing that we commented on over and over again was communication, and how important communication is. That if you're not communicating, then everyone involved is riding on a tremendous amount of assumptions, right? So I think it's so important to over-communicate, especially in a high-demand market where many leads are being evaluated based upon that initial communication. So planners may be receiving a turn down or a no availability response because they didn't provide enough information at all.
Absolutely, and I think really when it comes time for your planning your site inspection, really make the effort for you and your DMO to communicate on the phone. I think 20, 30 minutes on the phone will save you so much work and time later in the process, that it's really, really important to have that conversation. We all love our electronic communications, but I think that good old-fashioned phone call to really flesh out the needs, flesh out the people who are coming to the site inspection, making sure that we have all of the details and things, and really kind of can align ourselves with your objectives is so very important. And I think at NYC & Company what we do, and I know many of my DMO partners do this, is that we really are that one neutral party that gathers all the information about you and disseminates that out to all of our people that are going to be joining us on the site inspection. So rather than having you as a planner spend 30 minutes telling that same story over and over again, we really can gather that for you and work with all the parties involved.
That's so true, and I get it. I mean, I get that people, the people want to avoid that time, right? They don't want to sit down and unpack the suitcase, right? So they just move ahead electronically, and what is set up as a time-saving device ultimately prohibits you from being able to save time. So again, I think your point of get on the phone, get the opportunity with a destination expert to kind of eliminate some choices, maybe add some choices that didn't look possible, and start from a clean point of reference.
Absolutely.
So we talked a lot about how planners tend to talk a lot about meeting specifics or meeting parameters or setups, but then they kind of minimize or don't talk at all about attendee demographics. And you might say, well, why is this important? Like, why is it so important to talk about the attendees? And we know everyone's fighting for attendees. We know everyone is fighting to drive attendance. So when I give you information about who my attendees are, the breakdown of perhaps male to female, age groups. Maybe I'm telling you about how well traveled they are or what kinds of things they like to do outside the meeting. If I take the time to really gauge those factors with you, what do you do with that information? How does it help you, and how does it help the hotel?
Well, I think that, if you provide generic information to us, then more than likely you're going to get a generic site inspection. When you provide specifics about the attendees, then we really can help tailor what experiences we show you on that site inspection, because, as we're discussing, you're coming into a very big and complex environment where there are many different experiences. In New York City, we have, close to 110,000 guest rooms in the city now. We have, 24,000 restaurants. I mean, these are big, big numbers that we need to help tailor and move you into the right direction. So, for example, I had a Gordon's Food incentive come to me, and the first thing in my mind was, oh, this is a group that's going to want a lot of high-end experiences. They're going to want to go to all the fine dining and this and that. And really, when I started talking to the planner and we had that phone call, really what they wanted was kind of they were, owners of restaurants that were coming. They wanted a mid-level sort of dining experience because that's what they represented, and they really wanted to come and see trends. So instead of, you know, directing them in a direction that I thought that they might want to go, we really provided them with, you know, dining options that were really more tailored to their needs, and it really set up for some successful and real innovative type of site inspection experiences.
That's cool, Lisa. And you told me about even directing, you know, a student group on a budget in NYC, right? Like, what would you suggest to someone like that?
Absolutely. I mean, our team is so fantastic. We have a great destination services team, which I know a lot of our DMOs do, and we really helped them as far as, you know, providing them content all about free things to do in the city. We really provided them with our delegate pass, which provides lots of you know, discounts throughout the city. So really, when we know our attendees, you know, we can make sure that what they experience within this big, huge ball of experiences that we offer is really right for them, and that they walk away with a first-rate experience that is the experience that they want.
That's great, Lisa. So our fifth tip was all about challenging creativity, right? And that comes really during the site inspection when, you know, I often laugh at, you know, hoteliers in general, and we're all guilty of it, of, you know, just kind of walking and pointing, right, during the site inspection and saying, oh, yeah, we can do that, or we can do this. And how do you encourage really planners to get the most from the site inspection, and how do you encourage you know, your hotel and your venue operators to really ramp up showing planners what they can do versus telling them what they can do?
Well, I think it's important that during that conversation that we have to plan the site inspection, that we really identify having the right people in the room. So, you know, if you are very focused on an AV component, if you're really focused on a culinary component or a gala or whatever it is that really are the drivers for your program, that we have those people who are specialists from the hotels or venues in the room with us. And I think really what we want to do is, like you said, we, rather than walking into an empty room and saying, oh yeah, we can do that, you said this, we can do that, we really want them to show you. And I would say ask for pictures of past events that are similar to yours, maybe in the same industry, ask for best practices, and really get those visuals, because a picture is really worth 1,000 words. I mean, you can have somebody tell you, yes, I can do that, but when they show you a photo and that really aligns with what your objective is, I think that's a great place to jump off from.
And Lisa, we also talked about, you know, people like yourselves, you know, destination experts, being able to kind of be, if you will, like the curators of destination content and contacts. So can a planner ask you to, you know, provide them with testimonials or references or even phone numbers and emails of planners who have had a similar sized group or meeting in your city so that they can discuss logistics and best practices, not only with you and the venues, but, you know, actually with their peers?
Absolutely. We do that all the time, and we really find that that's, you know, a great way for, you know, everybody to feel good about the choices that they're making. And I think that's a really important aspect, is to really get those testimonials and make those phone calls. Absolutely.
This is one, and I know you and I both come from that hotel background, and this is one that I see come up a lot that really slows down or takes or zaps the power out of a site inspection, and that is not addressing the hard stuff up front. I think, you know, many planners feel that the site inspection is kind of a wine and dine, great opportunity to be hosted in a destination, and many times you're there on a complimentary basis, and it doesn't feel like the right time to sit down and have conversations about attrition or cancellation or concessions or food and beverage minimums, right? And yet these are the things that when the rubber meets the road are going to make the difference. So what would be your advice, and what would be the way you could support your planners through addressing this hard stuff?
Well, I think going back to those initial conversations and outlining those types of concerns, whether it be budget, whether it be, like you said, cancellation or attrition, I think that letting us know those things up front will, A, allow us to get the right people in the room to have those discussions when you come on the site inspection, and really it will help us pave the way for those discussions, so that when we're on the site inspection, it's really not the first time that the group has heard about this, that the people that need to have the discussion are prepared for that discussion, so that when you leave, you get the right answers. I think difficult discussions are so much more productive and efficient face-to-face versus leaving and saying, oh, everything's great, and then starting this long email train with all these complicated matters that really can get misconstrued over email, whereas that face-to-face discussion can really start not only a great dialogue about a difficult topic, but also a really good relationship from which to have those discussions.
And that's a great point. And also, I think from a time-saving perspective, when we talk about efficiency in site inspections, if there's some difficult things that are deal breakers for your meeting and you never discuss them, you may have wasted time seeing hotels that, bottom line, won't be able to offer you some concessions or some more stringent things that'll make the difference between being able to sign on the bottom line. So we often go into, even planners that do due diligence and have a lot of information up front, the one thing that seems to get missed so often is outlining the time frame for responses and decision making and who the decision maker is and how it's going to happen. So what happens when this particular component doesn't get outlined well?
Well, I think one of the things that we're all experiencing these days is that, things are moving so much more quickly than they have in the last few years. I mean, I think all of our destinations are becoming increasingly more busy. There's way more competition for space and all. And maybe the timelines for decision making and holding space, for instance, that we've become accustomed to really have changed in the last. I think we shouldn't make those assumptions, and that when we're planning the site inspection, and this goes back to what we were saying about having a good RFP, when we're gathering, and sending out our RFP, outlining those things, making sure when we get proposals back before the site inspection that the dates that the proposals are valid for are really in line with your decision-making process. I think making sure all of those things are in line are very important, because the last thing to do is to get back from a site inspection and find out that you really have 24 hours to digest all this information that you've just gathered and make a decision. You really want to make sure that you have time to go through your process and that time fits with all the players.
So tell me a little more about, you talked specifically about availability and how it's tightening. So how is that impacting groups that are trying to book further out, trying to hold space longer? How does that all play in?
Well, I think what you're seeing now is that people are getting planners are getting a little bit more nervous about things, and I'm seeing a lot of multi-year contracts being signed, and not only planners maybe in our traditional markets like the association market that book farther out, but I'm seeing corporate groups do that. So really the timeline and sort of the luxuries that we've had are really not there so much anymore. And you might be planning a 2023 group, and you've got 4 or 5 other groups that are all vying for that same date or space or what have you. So I think with the increased competition and demand, it's really driving these shorter timelines.
Yeah, I was talking to a planner the other day that, even said that she didn't notice in a proposal that, had been sent to her that dates had an expiration date, and so she committed them to a board, and then later found out that they were no longer available. So, it is much more competitive and does really, I think, make it necessary for us to kind of really pay attention to all of these parameters or tips, if you will, to amp up the power of that site. And I don't know, Lisa, if our planners on the line are convinced, but I know I am. I don't think in today's market that I would really go it alone, that I would head into a destination like New York or any other destination without getting somebody to help me unravel it all, somebody that had that local expertise, someone who had really the relationships. I know you've spent years in your marketplace making inroads and relationships, and that your planners can leverage those relationships. And then you have such a comprehensive view of the destination. You can go direct to a property or an NSO or a GSO, and we don't want to encourage planners not to maintain those relationships, but you offer them, maybe a 40,000-foot view from above to kind of help them, unravel and uncomplicate the destination. And Lisa, I know your services are free, but then we talked about how a couple things happen when planners hear that something's free. So I wonder if you would maybe demystify, if you would, our funding model in the CDB or DMO landscape.
Absolutely. Obviously, as you mentioned, our services are free to the planner. Everything we do is, complimentary, and really our mission with NYC & Company, and I know with many other DMOs, really is to make your experience the best it can be in our city, to make it easier and really for you to get the most out of your time spent. So that's our mission. We have no other hidden agenda. We are funded by, and as many are, there's many different funding models, but you might find your DMO is funded by city dollars. It could be membership fees. I mean, somebody is actually paying for that service for you, and we really need to show, an ROI to our stakeholders, which is why we really encourage you to involve us from the very beginning of that RFP process, not only to make your life so much easier, but really to show the value of your business to our constituencies. We really are your expert. Like you said, we have that 40,000-foot view, but we also really have sort of the pulse on what's happening in that destination, from all the new product that might be coming out to changes in business practices. We're really very intimate with those types of details. And you really should look at us as really the NSO for your destination that you're coming to, and really to use us for the same reason you would use a hotel NSO, as sort of being your one point of contact and really, sort of encapsulating the value that your company or association brings to the destination.
That's great, Lisa. And also, I think that, if planners are looking for a resource online to find all destinations at a glance, we just like to point them to empowerMINT.com. It is DMAI's web portal, kind of the personal meeting planning tool to connect you to destinations and also destination experts like Lisa. So I'm aware that I have some noise in the background. I hope that it's not too distracting. Unfortunately, outside my office, there's someone who's come with a blower, so some things can't be avoided. So CMP credit for today's webinar is available through CIC, and it falls under Domain H, which is Site Management. And you will receive your CMP certificate and a webinar recording. It'll be delivered to you early next week before the holidays, and so we look forward to getting that out to you as well. We'd love for you to keep in touch with us, and we've shown you some ways in which to communicate with us and stay connected to our information and our offerings. And I know Chimo from our Empowerment team has been monitoring the question board, and we'll get to the questions from the audience in just a minute, but I'd like to just quickly introduce Chris Weisel and Chris with EPRO, if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute and talking to the planners about EPRO's offerings. And thank you again for your sponsorship, Chris.
Of course, Terry. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed our sponsorship and working with you folks for quite some time now. But my name is Chris Weisel. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called EPRO Direct and Inspire Mobile. We're a 15-year-old hospitality marketing company. And today I just wanted to mention or talk a bit about Inspire Mobile, which we've been developing custom event apps for about the last 5 years now for all different types of clients with all different types of conferences and in different markets. The way we've developed our apps was to kind of survey our database of meeting planners and uncover specifically what they were looking for in a conference app. And we kind of took that and gave it to our software development team, and that's pretty much what we built. So unlike our competitors, we're a cross-platform solution that work on all the major operating systems as a native app, and we're all at one affordable price. And every app that we build is custom and targets the specific needs of both the organizers and the attendees. They're very engaging and very interacting. If anyone wants to know or wants to learn a little bit more about us, they can go to EPRODirect.com. That's EPRODIRECT.com. Or certainly they can email me at chris.wezel, that's W-E-Z-E-L, at EPRODirect.com as well. So thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to work with you folks. We appreciate it. Great presentation.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, Lisa did a great job, and Chris, thank you again. So Shimo, I see a pretty active question board, and want to see if you have some things to offer up for Lisa to answer.
Yes, nice job also, Lisa.
Thank you.
Shimo, you seem to be cutting out a little bit.
Okay, am I back now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, they had a couple of questions here. Lisa, would you recommend that there's a RFP template or some good sample RFPs that illustrate the best practices that you kind of spoke of? Because one of our planners is constantly needing to train their folks and new people on these practices. What would you recommend?
I think that going to your professional associations like DMAI, MPI, PCMA, I think if you are members of those organizations, I know all of those have great tools, so I would say that would be a great resource. Talking to your hotel or DMO partners, they probably have tons of samples that they could give. I think those are all really good resources. And if you're looking at a specific destination, you can talk to your DMO ahead of time and maybe really get an idea of what is important for their particular destination to see on your RFP to ensure that it has the most success.
And Shimo, I'd like to refer our planners to our blog, and I've put the arrow there, blog.empowerMINT.com. We do have an RFP workbook as a template. I'd also like to mention our partner Convention Industry Council, because they have a great template or web template on their site as well.
And maybe we can include those links to those resources, Terry, in our follow-up email today. And we had another question about what are examples of pieces of information that, Lisa, you frequently see that is left out of the RFPs?
I think, really these days we really need a full history on the group as much as you can provide, not only pickup, but destinations that you've been to, budgets, food and beverage spend. I mean, these are all very important components, particularly for the hotels to be able to get you a real thorough proposal. So I think history is very important. But I also think that whole profile of the meeting and the objectives and all, just sort of a synopsis of the attendees, really helps us target and match make the right options within the city for you. I mean, I think, if we know that your group is on a budget, we're certainly not going to, send your RFP or help you or recommend a 5-star hotel. We're going to, recommend other options.
I think to your point there, Lisa, MeetingsNet did a survey, a study earlier this year, and it talked to hotels about what they frequently see missing. And I think to your point is that they're reporting back that 40% of the time they don't have enough information by which to really reply to the RFP they've received. So I think that you make some really good points on that front.
Absolutely.
I think go ahead.
I think that'll really help planners get the quickest and best response.
I think that we had another question that we kind of talked a little bit about. How does a planner really understand when the high compression times are in any particular destination in order to understand, where they need to guide their own internal stakeholders on the whole notion of flexibility? So how can they find out? I mean, all the destinations are so different. New York City, for example, trying to find space the second week of December might be really a tough task, right? So how do they find out about high compression times?
I think that's where getting your DMO partner involved during the RFP process, even before you send it out, and really having those conversations and finding out, because it's different for, many different cities. So I think we can advise you of those dates that are compression times for NYC and Company. We can advise you of, times over the United Nations General Assembly or the Marathon or all these different big events that really cause compression. And other cities, it can be, citywide times, those types of things. So really going to your city experts is important to get that information. And not only that information on compression, but best patterns for that particular destination, best times of year. I think that will also help you.
Really good ideas.
Shimo, I did want to say in that question, I'm back now, but I did want to say in that question that the planner had asked if there was like a nationwide list of, access to peak or need times. And I don't think that exists. It is really a destination by destination, but any DMO or CVB can provide you with their specific need times.
And, I think that input, though, is really important, because if that is something that certainly is needed, we can add that to empowerMINT.com's destination profiles, kind of a place to really find out when the high seasonalities, if you will, to give planners that information in advance.
That's great.
We talked a little bit about site inspections on this, but if you don't have a specific meeting requirements, like in an RFP already articulated, but you're kind of considering the destination, you want to be able to cite the destination in advance before really going through an RFP process. Lisa, the planner was wondering, is that something that the CVBs can help her with?
Absolutely. I think, we're really here to be your resource at any stage of your process, and any time that you have that we can educate you on our destination, we're more than happy to do that. And really, I think this applies to meetings of all sizes. I think there's kind of a myth out there that we might only be helpful during, for someone who is planning a big citywide, for instance. But really in New York City, we see that, nearly 75% of the meetings that happen in the city, for example, are under like 100 peak. So we really have a lot of resources for small and large meetings, as I know many DMOs do, and we're there to help regardless of the size or regardless of the stage that you're in. So we could do some brainstorming with you to try and narrow your agenda and make sure that you see things that will ultimately help you when you have a program that comes to our destination.
Otherwise, they could be there for for weeks on end, right, Lisa?
Exactly, yeah. With nearly 110,000 rooms in the city, it would take a little time to see them all.
Well, we'll wrap up the questions with this one last, and it might be a little bit outside of scope, but one of the planners is curious to understand how this site inspection process and RFP process might be different for international destinations. And I know, Lisa, you do a fair amount of work with international planners, but do you have any insight about how they work with international destinations in their RFP process?
I find that the international DMOs are extremely strong, that they are, oftentimes not have representation for a particular city, but really for the entire country. So, they can help with all of the logistical things that we've talked about, and, can even add in different travel requirements that are required, all of those sort of nuts and bolts kinds of things that will help you as far as making sure that you're successful in a new country. So I think, for sure, when you're looking internationally, your DMO is probably even more important, if that can be the case, to make sure that they guide you in the right direction. But I think they offer very similar services as we do domestically.
Great. Thank you, Terry, and thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. We appreciate being involved.
Thank you for extending your time and your knowledge, Lisa, and Shimo for grabbing those questions. So just as a reminder, you will receive your CIC certificate for your participation today, along with the recording of this webinar. As mentioned, we will add the link to the RFP workbook and Convention Industry Council's template, so that you'll have those resources as well. We aim to please. So please check your spam next week. Often our follow-up reminders end up in folks' spam and they think that they did not get them. So if you'll do us the service of just kind of checking your spam to make sure that you get that. And if for any reason you don't, you can certainly reach out to me. You have my contact information from signing up for the webinar today. So everyone, thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. And Lisa, thank you for unraveling the wonderful gateway city of NYC and for doing service for all of our DMOs across the country.
Thank you, everybody. It was a delight.